Lansu Chinese Garden is celebrating 25 years of culture, community, and connection this September. If you haven't been, it's the gem of the historic Old Town Chinatown neighborhood. And now is the perfect time to discover why Lansu is more than a garden. They're inviting everyone to help them celebrate their milestone with discounted admission, cultural performances, historical exhibits, and so much more. You can go to lansugarden.org for more details. That's LANSU garden.org. Intel is Oregon's largest private employer, but right now the company is facing a pivotal moment. Last week, President Trump announced the federal government would buy $8.9 billion in Intel stock, taking a 10% stake in the company. Now, this news comes after massive layoffs, falling behind in the race to build advanced chips, and amidst warnings that Intel might actually just exit high-end chip manufacturing altogether. So today on CityCast Portland, we're talking with Oregonian business and technology reporter Mike Rogaway about what this federal intervention could mean for Intel, for Oregon, and for the global chip industry. It's Wednesday, August 27th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. You know, we've been hearing about the challenges facing Intel for many months, including the thousands of recent layoffs in their Oregon facilities. Then soon after, Intel suggested that it just might stop developing advanced chips. And I don't know, there's been a lot of Intel circling the drain, but for some reason, this really stood out as potentially being really, really bad. Could you explain why?
Okay, so Intel's been through a lot recently, among them a CEO transition. Their new CEO, Lip-Bu Tan, is still in the process of articulating his strategy. And so when they released quarterly financial results last month, late July, in their securities filing, they dropped a bombshell. They said, if we can't find other companies that want to hire us to make their chips in our Intel factories, maybe we'll stop making advanced semiconductors altogether. And the reason that's so significant is because that's kind of what Intel is. That defines it. For many, many years, for decades, they were the most advanced semiconductor company in the world. And the idea that they wouldn't make advanced chips at all anymore is a seismic shift and permanently would relegate them down market. It's a very, very big deal in Oregon because that's what Intel does in Oregon. That what they now call their Gordon Moore Park campus at Ronler Acres in Hillsboro. They have thousands of PhDs there working many years in advance to cook up new ways to make semiconductors, advanced chips that will have more capabilities, enable faster computing, enable computers that use less power. And this has been Intel's special sauce for many, many years. And the idea that they would give that up would be a big change in the company, a real concession that they're not on the road to comeback, that they're permanently diminished. And more than that what they do in Oregon is no longer central to the company. For at least since the beginning of this century, the Hillsboro site, it's not Intel's headquarters, but it has been Intel's brain. That is where they have always looked for their new innovations. If they're not going to be an innovative company anymore, then what does that mean for Oregon's future? What is Intel's future in Oregon? They're the state's largest corporate employer. Without that, it's a real step back for the state.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't it also have implications for the United States, though?
Yes. We talk a lot about whether or not the U.S. has enough semiconductor factories.
Exactly.
And for economic and national security reasons, it makes sense that we would want people to have advanced technology made in the U.S. But it's actually even more important than that. To put it more to the point, you want the ability to develop advanced manufacturing, to develop advanced chips. Intel is the only company based in the United States that does this. Everyone else is in other countries.
Like China.
China, Taiwan, and South Korea.
Yeah.
So if Intel's not doing this, no one in the United States is. Whether or not another company like TSMC, they're now the world's most advanced semiconductor manufacturer based in Taiwan. And they have some factories now in the U.S. But even if TSMC has some factories in the United States, if they're not doing this advanced research in the United States, then it really doesn't achieve what we're setting out, which is economic and national security, what we're setting out to achieve.
Exactly.
So that's Intel or nobody right now. I mean, over the course of many years, another advanced semiconductor manufacturer might emerge, but not anytime soon in the United States.
Yeah. And the reason I asked about the widening of the scope here of S2, why it means so much to the United States, is because President Trump came out last Friday and said the federal government is planning on buying $8.9 billion in Intel stocks. So I know that they've stated, hey, this isn't going to give us voting power in the boardroom, meaning we won't be navigating where they go from here. But what does it mean exactly, and why don't I believe that?
Well, you think about it, $8.9 billion buys the United States government, the federal government, 10% of Intel. It's not something traditionally the U.S. government has gotten involved in, investing in private companies. It has happened from time to time. Bank bailouts, auto industry bailouts, things like that. But typically when that's happened, the government has said, we're going to hold these shares for a limited time to stabilize a crucial industry, and then we're going to get out. In this case, the U.S. says, oh, we're going to be part owner of this company. It's a big shift. The intention appears to be that the U.S. will be a permanent shareholder in Intel. And as you said, the U.S. says, these are non-voting shares. We're not taking a seat on the board. We're not going to tell private industry how to do its business. Well, anyone who believes that, it was just 2 weeks ago that President Trump was calling for Intel's CEO to resign. Now he owns 10% of the company. They're Intel's largest shareholder. So they have no seats on the board. But if you're the largest shareholder and you say, I'm not happy with how the company is being run, maybe I'll sell some of my shares. Well, that'll push the stock down real sharp. The Trump administration and whoever leads the federal government next will have a lot of authority over how Intel operates. They'll have a lot of leverage.
Yeah.
And it's a departure for the United States. This is not typically what the government has done, is run private companies. But in this case, this is what's happening. The Commerce Secretary said last week that this is what we want. When we help companies, we want shares in those companies, we being the federal government, in return. So it makes the government a player in the private sector in a way that it has not historically been in the United States.
Well, I just wonder what the president will be doing with SDIC. I know we sort of discussed some possibilities. Is he going to be bullying Apple into using Intel processors again? And I know that you mentioned they met, the CEO and President Trump, and afterwards, supposedly, President Trump was like, he's all right. So I'm just curious, what's cooking here?
Well, so we have this whirlwind set of events. 2 weeks ago or so, the president saw something on TV about the fact that Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan had invested in Chinese semiconductor companies in the past. He said that's unacceptable. He has to go. Again, not something the federal government in the United States has traditionally done in dictating who runs private companies. This is something you would see in how do you say it? Socialist countries. That's it.
Yes.
But in the United States, we are apparently moving in that direction. Not socialism necessarily, but maybe something like state capitalism. And so Intel CEO flew out and met with Trump, and Trump did a 180, as he often does, and says, actually, he doesn't have to resign. He can not only stay, he's actually great.
Yeah.
And then they struck this deal. The U.S. has a lot of leverage with Intel for a lot of reasons, but there may be an opportunity for Intel here. You asked, well, is Trump going to demand that Apple start using Intel chips? Probably not. That would be a big lift for Apple to change its chip architecture again. And Intel doesn't really make the kinds of chips that Apple is using right now. But what they could do is they could strongly encourage Apple, NVIDIA is the big AI semiconductor company, other companies like that, to start using Intel's factories to make their chips. It's hard to say. I've seen some analyst commentary this week that suggests that's maybe not realistic either, because these companies, if they determine Intel's factories are second tier, they're not going to intentionally dumb down their products to put them in Intel factories. But it might give everyone an incentive, make everyone aligned to work more toward Intel's success. I mean, in this case, the U.S. is literally invested in Intel's comeback right now. If you're Intel, having the U.S. government on your side is probably a good thing at a time that you're struggling. It's a good thing until it's a bad thing. If the president becomes irritated or unhappy with the direction you're going.
Oh, but he's very stable, so I don't foresee that happening.
He is a very stable genius, so
I think they're fine. Let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, I'm curious about where the deal is and what kind of impact that deal will have on Oregon. Putting together estate plans for yourself or a family member can be one of the most difficult and frankly not fun things to do as an adult. But Ardent Estate Sales and their team of experts can at least make the selling part of it a lot less stressful. With over a decade of experience in the industry, Angela and her team takes great care to ensure that the entire process of organizing your estate sale is seamless. From pricing to staging, advertising, down to managing the sales, Angela is licensed, bonded, and insured, and she works hard to get everything right, creating the best and most profitable outcomes for her clients. Ardent Estate Sales brings a designer's eye to every setup. From artful displays to thoughtful arrangements, they're designing an inviting atmosphere that highlights value and tells a story, your story. To learn more and book a consultation, head to ardentestatesales.com. That's ardentestatesales.com. If you're a home DIYer like me, you might have a few leftover paint cans gathering dust in your basement. Or maybe your house already came with a bunch of them like mine did. So I'm happy to share that Paint Care makes recycling your leftover paint, stain, and varnish simple and easy with convenient drop-off locations as close as your local hardware store. Paint Care has 3 simple rules for painting smarter. 1, buy the right amount of paint for the job. 2, use up leftover paint. And 3, recycle the rest. If you visit paintcare.org/3simplerules, you'll find tips on how to do all 3. Buying the right amount of paint for your project, exploring DIY ideas for how to use up leftover paint, and also just look up the nearest drop-off site in your neighborhood. Paint Care is all about keeping it simple for Oregonians. So, Mike, where exactly is the deal? Is it still just being talked about, or is it been signed?
It's done. This moved very expeditiously, unusually fast that you would have a deal of this size. We'll just have to wait and see if there are some unforeseen consequences. Intel put out a statement at the beginning of this week, or rather a securities filing, where they laid out some of the risks from this potentially. And one of the things they said was, given the scarcity of recent U.S. precedents for transactions such as this, it is difficult to foresee all the potential consequences. There could be adverse reactions from investors, employees, customers, suppliers, other businesses or commercial partners. Foreign governments might not like it. They might be less receptive to Intel. Mm-hmm. And they pointed out that sales outside the United States account for 76% of Intel's revenue. So this came about very closely. And
I'm sorry, but this feels like before thoughts.
Yeah, maybe people should have walked this through before, but these guys jumped to the altar together, and now they're there. They're married.
Oh my God.
So we'll just have to see how it goes. But yes, this came together really fast. There are a lot of potential downsides. There is some opportunity there, both for the U.S. government and Intel. There is a reason why some countries pursue state capitalism. But the big stumbling block, as I see it, is that Intel's main problem isn't that it's running out of money. Earlier this month, it got $2 billion from the Japanese investment bank SoftBank. Now it has this additional $8.9 billion from the federal government. Mm-hmm. So now it has some cash. What's it going to do with that money? What are its plans? Intel hasn't said. Last month, their CEO said that it was unwise how much the company had been planning before he got there. Unwise and excessive, he called it, to build more manufacturing capacity. But in Friday's news release, it was all about building more manufacturing capacity. Mm-hmm. So which is it? Do we not need more manufacturing capacity, or do we need more manufacturing capacity? What is Intel telling us? I don't know. So it would be really great to have some clarity on what Intel wants to do with this money. Are they going to invest it in Oregon to make more advanced chips, to beef up their research? Are they going to build factories that they say they don't need? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that was my next question, is just like, what does this mean for Oregon? I will say, though, that it made sense that Intel was like, hey, our future is unclear. So why build out more manufacturing if there just not enough orders are coming in? We're not keeping up with technology, all this stuff. It doesn't make sense to continue making chips that not enough people are buying. So I can understand why they're like, now we have a ton of money. Now we can like do whatever. So either A, they've been told, we're going to get you some new customers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if we're speculating, I'm speculating with you. But like, once you go to bed with one of the most powerful governments in the world and they give you $8.9 billion, to me, I'm just like, why? What are they building?
There are a lot of unanswered questions, and you've just raised them. One possible scenario is that Intel thinks this buys them time. They said they were working on a 12 to 18-month timeline to find some big customers before they would give up. Well, now if you have, $2 billion from SoftBank and this additional $9 billion from the U.S. government, maybe you have longer. Maybe you can wait longer and continue down the road of trying to develop advanced chips, advanced manufacturing technology. But if money alone could solve these technological problems, they would be solved. These are very difficult problems. The researchers in Hillsboro, they're working with features on these chips that are just a little bigger than an atom. It is very difficult to get this right, and that's part of why Intel has gotten it wrong. The other problem, though, is they just laid off 15,000 people. And some of their top researchers have left on their own during this bloodletting.
Yeah.
So has Intel cut too far, too deeply?
It sounds like they could start headhunting some Taiwanese talent, and I would love to see a growing Taiwanese community in Hillsboro to accompany our growing Indian. I mean, we have some amazing Indian food in Beaverton and Hillsboro because of Intel.
Oh, for sure.
I would love some Taiwanese food. But let's talk about what this 10% stake could give the U.S. government. In Oregon, my concern is that the U.S. government now has more stake in Oregon.
Yeah. It's interesting because we've heard very little about what they call process development, making these new manufacturing nodes, these new generations of chips during all this discussion. I'm not sure that at the top levels of the U.S. government, there's a lot of awareness of what's involved in making these new generations of technology or where it's made. I think the focus has been on the factories because they're a big physical plant and they're very visible and they employ a fair number of people. But as we say, the special sauce is enabling that manufacturing, coming up with the new manufacturing technology to make it work. It's not easy to replicate that somewhere else, what's done in Hillsboro somewhere else. Could you theoretically take 3,000 Intel engineers and say, now you're all going to work in Arizona or some other state that's more friendly to the president? Yeah, I suppose something like that's possible. It would be extremely disruptive. And it might set you back.
So you're saying the big concern shouldn't be that President Trump could just be like, I don't like Oregon. I'm taking all of Hillsboro's, Intel facilities and moving them somewhere else. And that's not really the concern. But I mean, what could a 10% stake into one of the biggest employers in Oregon, if the U.S. government wanted to leverage things? Isn't that a big chip? Right there.
So to speak.
I didn't even mean to do that, by the way. That's just pure genius.
Intel has this big research factory. They call it D1X. It's probably the largest building in Oregon, I would guess. And they've spent tens of billions of dollars over the last 15 years building it out. It would not be quick or easy to replicate that somewhere else. Could you do something like that in an existing factory in Arizona? Probably. I'm not an expert. I shouldn't say. My guess would be perhaps you could, but it would be very disruptive. I think what they want to see is results. And I think we can expect the government to be fairly involved in making sure that Intel delivers results. But as I said earlier, if just throwing more money at the problem were the solution, Intel would have fixed it already.
Does this federal stake in Intel, do you think it sets a precedent for like more government involvement in Oregon's private sector? We know that if Intel were to go, that's a huge, huge part of our state's identity and economy. So they have this huge bargaining chip now. And so that is the concern to some people being me.
I guess we'll have to see. I mean, the government is doing this because it wants Intel to succeed, not necessarily to punish Oregon.
I'm pretty sure everyone's obsessed with Oregon.
I think it would hobble Intel to say, we want Oregon to say change its politics or change its economic policies or something, or we're going to stop investing in Intel. Well, that doesn't achieve what you're trying to do with Intel. It's obviously a very political administration, and its politics are obviously at odds with a lot of what Oregon values. But I think that risk is muted. The bigger risk is, can this big federal stake improve Intel's fortunes? And I think there's a lot of reason to wonder if it can. Is this helping Intel or hurting Intel?
Yeah, exactly. Because there's skepticism, of course.
Yeah.
Like you just said it yourself. They had a bunch of money. They went to the thing that was supposed to help them, which was their research and their Intel, and nothing really changed. So what is $8.9 billion going to do?
Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Intel hasn't said how it's going to spend this money, I think is very telling. It may be that they felt they had no choice. They felt that they either had to be Trump's friend or his enemy, and they opted to be his friend. So that is arguably better for the company than being the president's enemy. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't necessarily move you down the road as far as solving your technological problems. And that, as we keep saying, is their main problem, their technological problem. Mm-hmm. And it's just going to be a difficult road for them, as it has been for the last several years.
When do you think we could check back in with you, Mike, and just be like, what's happening now?
I mean, the last 2 months have been so eventful for Intel. Really, the last 6 or 8 months, probably among the most eventful periods in its history. It's really hard to tell. I mean, I think we could have a dramatic change again now that Intel's fortunes are linked to politics. Mm-hmm. The dynamics could change on a dime. So we'll just have to wait and see. You know, technology moves fast. Politics moves even faster. And so there could be dramatic changes at any time.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on and kind of breaking down what's been going on. We've just been seeing so many headlines flying at us, and also just like getting on your speculation chair with me. I love when you do that, by the way, Mike.
I mean, there's such a wide range of potential outcomes here
that
it's just very hard to gauge. But the landscape has changed dramatically. It's a dynamic time. It's interesting. Certainly as journalists, we're interested in it.
I want everyone to know that Mike, this entire time when he was talking about possible doom, he had a huge smile on his face. And and I know it's slight nervousness of like, the future, but I know there's a bit of you, Mike, that's like, oh, I cannot wait to write about it.
It is very interesting. It is very interesting to see how this is playing out.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, rate or leave us a review. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.